Animal Crossing is one of Nintendo's most popular series, and fans of it will treat it like a lifestyle. Like, they'll act like it's this sprawling life sim, but then they log 400 hours doing the exact same 5 tasks on a loop. There's like no real gameplay here, there's just chores with branding. Shake a tree, catch a bug, talk to a villager who repeats the same dialogue for the 5th day in a row. The entire experience hinges on a routine and being extremely patient, and that's fine, but let's stop pretending like there's a lot of depth here. And New Horizons exposed this franchise completely. Once the novelty wore off, people realized the villagers had less personality than ever. There was barely any good progression. Freedom mostly meant grinding for furniture, and fans complained about this game, but they kept playing it. Animal Crossing works because it fills time, not because it challenges or surprises, or really does anything that interesting. Yet people are so loyal to this series for some reason. Every time Game & Watch comes up, Nintendo fans suddenly become museum curators. Nobody actually plays these things. Nobody sits down after work and says, you know what sounds fun? One LCD sprite and a beep. But the second someone criticizes them, the defense is immediate. You have to appreciate them in context. I swear these are the most obnoxious people ever. They refuse to compare games from eras and think, since it was good at the time, it compares to something like Breath of the Wild now. Games evolve and can get better over time, and they just cannot comprehend that. Context doesn't make something fun, it may make it important, and those are not the same thing. Game & Watch is the foundation for a lot of things, but those foundations are meant to be built upon, not revisited like they're still engaging. And let's be honest, these are barely games. Calculators can play much better games than these today. And the only reason Game & Watch is still talked about in the first place is because of Mr. Game & Watch. Nintendo fans will swear these games made them smarter. They didn't. What they did was convince an entire generation that touching a screen and answering basic math questions counted as mental training. You feel accomplished because the game gives you a score and a smiling cartoon professor, not because you actually learned something. These are games designed to make you feel good for 5 minutes before you move on with your day, and that's why nobody ever talks about them unless they're reminiscing about the DS era. Also, Big Brain Academy somehow took the idea and made it worse. Same concept, less personality, more minigames that feel like rejected party game ideas. I don't really know if this game has a fan base. And the goal of this video is to ragebait fans of all these series, but that can't be done if there's no fans of this series. Let's just start by saying Wii Sports is not the greatest game ever made. It's the greatest demo ever made, maybe. The Wii era gets defended like it was a golden age of game design, when really it was a golden age of just casual gaming. Swinging your arm felt magical for about 2 weeks in 2006 or 2007. Then you realized half the games barely worked, and the other half worked just well enough to keep grandparents entertained at family gatherings. Wii Fit convinced people that standing on a plastic scale was a personality. Wii Play existed so Nintendo could sell you more remotes, and Wii Sports Resort tried desperately to convince you motion control still mattered once the gimmick wore off. These games are remembered fondly because they were social, not because there was really anything more to them. If you strip away the nostalgia and the me's, what you're left with is a reminder that being accessible doesn't automatically make something timeless. Nintendogs fans talk about this game like it raised them. In reality, it was a digital Tamagotchi that got boring the second you realized your dog would be fine whether you played or not. There's no challenge, no progression, no real stakes. You pet a dog, teach it a trick, and check in once every few days out of guilt. Nintendo figured out how to make people feel bad for not opening a cartridge, and somehow that became a beloved franchise. If this game came out today, people would complain that there's nothing to do and that it lacks content, but because it came out on the DS, it gets a free pass of innovative instead of what it really is, shallow. Like, just spend time with your real dog. There's a good chance you didn't even know this existed. Well, I sure did, considering I own the DS and Switch versions, which gives me authority to talk about it. These are digital board games with Nintendo polish. That's it. Are you waiting for me to say something else? Like, you're playing chess, you're playing dots and boxes, all games you could play for free online, but you're paying $50 for a clean UI here. Like, imagine going to a friend's house and be like, let's play Clubhouse Games. I definitely never did that, by the way. Wario fans like to act like they're on some secret Nintendo doesn't want you to know. They'll tell you Wario Land is actually better than Mario, that WarioWare is genius level design, and that the franchise was way ahead of its time. What they won't admit is that Wario exists almost entirely as a reaction to Mario, not as a fully formed identity. Wario Land peaked early and then just slowly died off because no one cared about these games. By the time Shake It rolled around, people were praising the animation more than the actual gameplay, which kinda says everything. And then WarioWare fans are a special breed. They'll defend 5-second microgames like they're just the best things ever made. They don't have the patience to play an actual game, so they just play these 5-second games. Fire Emblem fans are some of the most obnoxious Nintendo fans because they'll act like they're better than you because you don't want to play an RPG featuring 5,000 blue-haired Smash fighters in a cringe anime art style. They demand that the series be treated like it's on the same level as Mario or Zelda and not a mid-tier niche Nintendo series. Also, the names of some of these games are just so stupid. Three Houses? Why not make it 4 at that point? Fire Emblem If? What the hell kind of name is that? Rhythm Heaven? More like Rhythm Hell. I've never played any of these games, and I don't plan on it. This is basically just WarioWare with less personality. Like, I don't even know what to say about it. If you're a fan of this, good on you. You have like 5 other people who play this. Every time a new entry comes out, the same thing happens. Glowing reviews, endless praise about strategy and atmosphere, and then total silence once everyone remembers how stressful and annoying these games actually are. Let's get one thing straight, Pikmin is not relaxing. That's just anxiety with these flower creatures. You're constantly racing against an in-game clock, babysitting tiny creatures with the survival instincts of your least favorite Walking Dead character. Half the gameplay is watching Pikmin die because they didn't listen to you and walked into fire or decided drowning looked fun today. And when that happens, fans will say that's the point. No, that's the excuse. The combat is not deep either. The strategy mostly boils down to just throwing a large number of Pikmin at something and hoping the AI doesn't sabotage you. The controls fight you, the camera fights you, and the game punishes experimentation while pretending it rewards it. And the fan base, completely detached from reality. They talk about these games like they're brilliant tactical masterpieces, when in practice, they're incredibly niche games for children. They'll tell you the series just isn't for everyone, which is a polite way of admitting most people just bounce right off the series. There's a reason Pikmin games sell well by Pikmin standards and not by literally any other Nintendo standard. EarthBound fans are some of the most defensive people in gaming, which is impressive considering how few of them have actually played the entire series. This franchise survives almost entirely on games that have nothing to do with it, like Undertale and Deltarune. The combat is slow, repetitive, and just mechanically bare bones even by RPG standards of the time. Random encounters are constant, menus are clunky, and progression often feels like trial and error disguised as surreal humor. Fans love to say it's subversive, but most of what it subverts is your patience. The game relies heavily on you tolerating outdated design because the writing is funny, and once you've seen the jokes, replaying it becomes a complete chore. There's a reason most discussions about EarthBound focus on tone and music instead of, the actual gameplay. That should be important. And then Mother 3 gets treated like it's a sacred text, largely by people who experienced it through YouTube playthroughs and translated scripts. People act like this is some untouchable masterpiece, but it's really not. It's just because we never got a proper release in the West, so it just makes people glaze this game. And you know what? I'm glad Mother 3 never got a proper release in the West. I didn't even know Star Fox had fans, but apparently it does, and that's really just from one game. Star Fox 64 is remembered fondly because it had voice acting, branching paths, and a talking frog.
Too hot!
Wow, never saw one of those before.
The R-Wing can't withstand the surface temperature of the sun!
Strip away the presentation, and you're left with short, repetitive rail shooter levels that maybe last like 5 minutes each. Every attempt to revive the series fails because the core idea just is not deep enough to carry modern expectations. Star Fox Zero tried motion controls and everyone hated it. Assault exists only to prove that changing genres doesn't automatically save a franchise. Star Fox isn't dormant because Nintendo forgot about it, it's dormant because nobody agrees on what it should be, including the fans who keep demanding its return. No one would even know or care about the series if Captain Falcon wasn't in Smash. Seriously, name me one other character in the game. You can't. The games are fast, punishing, and demand a lot of learning from the player, and that sounds great until you realize that excludes about 90% of Nintendo's audience. They'll say it rewards skill, but what it really rewards is tolerance for frustration. There's a fine line between challenging and unwelcoming, and F-Zero sprinted past it, and F-Zero just completely went beyond this. Every time a Nintendo Direct happens, F-Zero fans show up in the chat like it's a support group, and every time they leave disappointed because Nintendo knows exactly how niche the series is. Respecting F-Zero doesn't mean reviving it, it means understanding why it never caught on, but beyond a very loud minority. I also think Captain Falcon is annoying, and I despise you if you main him. Donkey Kong is treated like a pillar of Nintendo history, but the franchise itself has an identity crisis it's never recovered from. Is it a platformer, a rhythm game, a minecart simulator? Depends on the decade, basically. The country games get worshipped like they're flawless, even though half the difficulty comes from the cheap enemy placement and memorization. No one even cared about the series for a decade until we got Bonanza, and if we're being honest, it's not even that good. It's just a destruction simulator with overrated music. The only people who claim to actually be Donkey Kong fans are like 40 years old, if not older, and it's because they played it in the arcade in the last millennium or played it on the SNES. Like, we're done with 80s and 90s. Bonanza is just a much worse version of Odyssey, and we have to start acknowledging that. If they featured anyone except Yoshi, no one would even know they exist because they are platformers for little children who can't even beat New Super Mario Bros. It's crazy how the series has been around for so long and only has like 2 good games. They basically just feel like filler on each system. Yarn World, Crafted World, the mysterious Encyclopedia coming out soon. Who even plays these? If they featured anyone except Yoshi, no one would care about these games. Like, all they are is platformers for little children who couldn't beat New Super Mario Bros. But no, since it's Yoshi, that's why people talk about these games like they're the best thing ever. The first game in the series did have atmosphere, and I'll give it that, but after that, they just leaned harder into charm and less into tension. The combat boils down to just shining a flashlight and pulling back on a stick, and yet fans talk about it like it's some clever ghost hunting system. Like, you aren't Bill Murray, bro. Luigi carries these games with his personality, but not mechanics, and that's fine, I guess, but let's stop pretending this is some deeply designed franchise, when most of the enjoyment comes from watching Luigi panic. People who think this series is scary probably get scared of just seeing a boo. Like, it's crazy how the series has been around for almost 25 years now, and it's only even had 1 good game. If there's been one series I've been wanting to rage bait the most in this, it's Xenoblade Chronicles, and that's because this isn't even just rage bait. Like, the fans of this just love to act like they're on a higher plane of existence. They'll tell you that the Xenoblade games are these deep, complex, philosophical games, usually right before launching into a 20-minute explanation you didn't ask for, and that's kind of the whole problem. It also has that problem, like with modern Fire Emblem games, that they just have this cringe anime art style that just simply makes me not want to play them. These games are enormous, padded, and completely uninterested in respecting your time. Tutorials last longer than entire indie games. Systems stack on top of systems until the combat starts feeling like you're watching spreadsheets fight each other. Half of the time, players aren't even sure why something worked, but the game just said that it did. The pacing is legendary for all the wrong reasons. Hours of running across empty terrain, listening to party members repeat the same voice lines, and that's punctuated by cutscenes that feel like they were written by someone who reads manga instead of looking for a job. Now let's talk about the fan base for a second, because I gotta go more into that. Xenoblade defenders treat criticism like it's a personal attack, as if not loving these games mean you didn't understand them. No, people understood them, they just didn't want to spend 80 hours proving it.
Splatoon 2!
So the core idea for this is great, but the execution is a mess, quite literally. Matches are decided less by skill and just more by team composition, lag, and whether matchmaking decided to be kind that day. You can play well and still lose repeatedly, and fans will tell you that's part of the charm. The community loves to pretend that the game is casual friendly, right up until a new player logs in and gets demolished by someone who's been playing non-stop since launch. There's no real onboarding, no meaningful separation of skill levels, and an expectation that you'll just get good or leave. Splatoon survives because it looks different and sounds different. If it didn't, people would be far less forgiving about how punishing and inconsistent it feels, and every sequel somehow manages to change just enough to annoy everyone while fixing almost nothing people actually asked for. Like, why would I play this when I could just play the newest COD game? Kirby fans are extremely sensitive, which makes sense given how often they have to defend a franchise that refuses to challenge its audience. Every time someone points out how easy these games are, the same response shows up. The post-game is hard. Great, the content most players never see as challenging. That really changes everything. Kirby games are polished, charming, and designed so almost anyone can finish them without thinking too hard. That's not a flaw, but fans insisting there's hidden complexity lurking beneath the surface or just reaching. Most copy abilities are used once or twice, bosses barely push back, and the game ends before they could truly do anything interesting with their mechanics. The series gets away with this because Kirby is cute and the music is excellent. Strip that away and people would be a lot harsher about how safe these games play it. Kirby games are like slightly better Yoshi games. Also, just a quick side note, you're telling me Kirby saved the entire Nintendo multiverse. Alright, Sakurai. Unless you're 40 years old, you probably didn't even know Punch-Out existed until Smash Wii U, and even then, most people didn't play it, they just recognized Little Mac and pretended they had history with the series. Punch-Out is basically pattern memorization disguised as boxing. You aren't outsmarting opponents, waiting for a blinking animation so you can do the same dodge, punch, dodge, loop again. It can be satisfying in the way a rhythm game is satisfying when you finally nail a sequence, but there's not much here. The franchise's entire reputation is built on, wow, this is difficult, and also having a handful of iconic characters like Mike Tyson. And the second you remove the nostalgia of getting humbled as a kid, you're left with a short game that lives and dies on whether you're repeating the same fight until your brain finally accepts the timing. Punch-Out's cool, I guess, but it's the definition of a classic and it should not be brought back today. Like, that Wii version really showed why the series is just not very good and is just an alright arcade and NES game. Mario Kart Discord is hilarious because the series gets treated like a competitive esport and a party game at the same time, depending on which one helps someone cope in the moment. Losing is unfair, winning proves skill, items are balanced until a blue shell hits you. The truth is, every entry blends together after a while, like there's new tracks, same chaos, drifting still feels good, sure, but the core experience hasn't meaningfully evolved since the GameCube era. Its refinement and remixing does not reinvention at all. Also, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe being sold for an entire console generation tells you everything. Nintendo didn't even need to take risks, they didn't need to overhaul the formula because the fanbase already treats the series like it doesn't need any changing. And then we got Mario Kart World, which is just horrendous. Like, you're telling me this game is worth $80, and if you like this game, you're just simply a casual. Metroid gets talked about like it's the sacred text. You'll hear the words atmosphere, isolation, environmental storytelling, all very nice words that magically appear right when someone forgets how annoying half these games are to actually play. Backtracking is not clever design just because it's intentional. Getting lost for an hour because you missed one tiny opening doesn't become meaningful the 10th time it happens. And the older games, people praise them while quietly admitting they never recommend them to a new player without a guide open. Every rough edge gets turned into the experience, stiff movement, vague progression, difficulty spikes that feel more like punishment than challenge, all forgiven because it's Metroid. Very convenient how that works, isn't it? And then the Prime series, like they get treated like the flawless evolution of the formula, yet most people remember scanning things more than actually fighting. Then Dread finally came out for modernized 2D games, but a lot of fans hate it because it's not Super Metroid. Most recently, Metroid Prime 4 came out, and I'm just gonna say that the game is good, and it's the best game ever made, and I'm gonna say that it's the worst game ever made because no matter what, that's gonna piss someone off. At least going off the discourse I've seen on this game. So whatever is the opposite you believe with Metroid Prime 4, that's what I believe. Gold Sun gets treated like it's one of the giants of RPGs, when really it's like two solid handheld games with amazing music and characters who will not shut up. The Djinn system, or however it's pronounced, I hope I'm pronouncing it wrong, is actually pretty cool, and that is why this game gets defended so much, like every time you argue with a fan. But once you move past that, the pacing is a mess, dungeons overstay their welcomes, puzzles repeat, and a dialogue stretches simple ideas into full-length novels. It's one of those series that feels epic while you're in it, and then evaporates the second you put it down. Ask someone to summarize Golden Sun without saying Djinn or World Split, and watch the confidence just drain out of their face. People beg for a revival, like Nintendo forgot a classic. Nintendo remembers, the audience just wasn't as big as the nostalgic crowd wants it to be, and they just need to accept it. Kid Icarus survives as a brand almost entirely because Smash Bros. Like, where would the series be without Pit being in Smash? Also, I can't even rage bait here. Like, I am a Pit main, so I'm gonna go a little light on this series. So the original is rough in ways people love to excuse. It has awkward controls, punishing difficulty, vertical levels designed to test your patience more than your skill. It's kind of game that just gets respect for being like a historic NES Nintendo game. Like, no one actually plays this for fun. There was the Game Boy title, which you may not have even known existed. Then there's Uprising, which gets held up like proof the franchise still has potential. And that's funny because, yeah, it's a great game in concept, but it hurts to play. It's just long sessions with awkward controls, and a lot of it is just very clunky overall. However, I am glad this exists because it gave me my main in Smash, so I'm gonna need all the other Pit mains to comment on this video. Alright, so I've went over a lot of Nintendo franchises already, but now I want to go over some really niche ones before I get to the final big series. So you probably didn't even know this game existed, but here's Electroplankton. It's like a game you play for 10 minutes just because it's a Nintendo game, it's just an experimental DS title, and I don't even know anything about this game, and that's probably for good reason. Like, I don't really think there's much here, and I think there's a reason that this is all but forgotten by Nintendo. Art Academy did not teach a generation how to draw, it taught a generation how to trace while feeling productive. As an educational tool, it's fine, but it's not this hidden gem franchise like people act like it is. Once you finish the lessons in this, there's no reason to go back to this unless your hobby is opening the same workbook repeatedly. Also, there's not a single artist who is actually going to have Art Academy as their main way to draw. NES Remix is nostalgia speedrunning for people who don't want to admit that they never replay pretty much any NES game. It works fine for what it is, like it's just mini challenges for people who want to act like they're experts on old Nintendo games, and I just don't understand why we haven't gotten an SNES Remix, which would be so much better than this. 1080 Snowboarding. 1080 Snowboarding, what even is this game? Like, this seems like it would just be another EA Sports game. Endless Ocean? Like, I looked up Nintendo franchises for this video, ones that I may not even know about, and I don't even know what this is. This game looks like it's basically a screensaver. Famicom Detective Club is a series I actually have heard of. Some people like it because it has more mature storytelling, basically like a visual novel Nintendo made. Pacing's incredibly slow, the interactivity is minimal, and the appeal lives almost entirely in atmosphere. The remakes look alright, I guess, but the experience still feels like homework for people who insist Nintendo games should grow up to earn their respect. Like, why play this when I could just play something like Dispatch, which is coming to Switch too soon? Starfy exists in that zone where everything is just like cute and harmless but incredibly safe. These games are not good. There's a reason they were never localized in the West, and the only way to really play them officially is on Nintendo Switch Online. Can any of you actually tell me anything about this game? Yeah, that's what I thought. Custom Robo gets called ahead of its time, like that automatically means it was good. Customizing robots sounds exciting until you realize the battles are repetitive and stiff, and the learning curve filters out everyone except the people who want to be filtered, because then surviving the game becomes part of the identity. This is just like a worse version of that one game that came out on the Wii U. Now we gotta talk about Pushmo, which I actually did cover in a video. This is a series of games where there's Pushmo, Pushmo World, Stretchmo, and Crashmo, and there's really not much to them, they're just simple puzzle games. The community carried this series because Nintendo didn't really do too much with it, because it just stars this forgettable Kirby knockoff. These games have like 20 fans, so that's the reason it was never ported to the Switch. BoxBoy is exactly what it sounds like. You play as a box, and these games are just incredibly simple, even though fans act like they're these incredibly difficult puzzle games. Like, this is something that feels like a Game Boy game. It barely does anything, and I totally will never make a video about this entire series, because it doesn't even deserve it if we're being honest. Picross is the franchise equivalent of eating the same meal every day and insisting it's peak because it's consistent. If you love number grids, these games are basically just endlessly good, I guess. If you don't, it's filling in boxes and calling it a day. These are just the same thing every time, and then in true Nintendo fashion, they have Mario versions, they have Pokemon versions, because these games weren't selling well enough on their own, so of course they have to add in their mascots. Pilotwings is a game a lot of you probably don't even know about. The last one was, I believe, a launch title for the 3DS, so it's been almost 15 years. Literally all these games are is just slow, clunky flying challenges meant to show off the system's hardware. Like, there's not really much else to this, and I don't think anyone's going to get rage baited by this because this game has no fans in the first place. Like, have you ever met someone who claims to have Pilotwings as one of their favorite series? Wave Race is one incredible novelty, water physics that felt magical enough to carry a whole game, but once the novelty wore off, there wasn't much left to build on. This is very much just a product of its time. Fossil Fighters gets framed like Pokemon's secret rival, when all it is Pokemon if it was bad, and actually, you know what, Pokemon's bad too, so this is just a worse version. None of these games are good. The excavation gimmick is maybe fun for 5 minutes, the designs are hit or miss, the combat was never interesting to me, and any nostalgia someone might have from this is just from wanting something to challenge Pokemon, not from Fossil Fighters actually doing anything noteworthy. Chibi Robo is a franchise you all probably know, and some of you may have even loved this series. After a very charming game on the GameCube, Nintendo just forgot about the series and just made a weird Japanese-only game and the horrible Chibi Robo Zip-Flash. Not even going to try to rage bait here, it's honestly just sad what happened to this series. Style Savvy surprisingly has one of Nintendo's most devoted fan bases because nobody else was making anything like it, but I mean, what is this? Like, this doesn't even seem like a Nintendo game, this seems like shovelware made for little girls when most of the people playing this are probably grown men. Tomodachi Life. I've been waiting to talk about this one. This game is honestly so weird. Like, how many Nintendo games can people get married and have children? Here's the list that I know of. And yeah, it's lumped in there with Fire Emblem, and Fire Emblem is cringe, so Tomodachi Life is cringe also. Just kidding, I love Tomodachi Life. Ring Fit Adventure gets praised like it reinvented fitness games, but really all it is just a much worse version of Wii Fit. Nintendo really just made this to sell more plastic peripherals, like there's no other reason this game exists. Excitebike is one of those games people respect because they're supposed to. The physics are cool, the track editor was ahead of its time, but the issue is the gameplay becomes repetitive very quickly. It's a great idea that just does not last very long, and there's really no reason to go back and play this. Like, it's called Excitebikes, but the bikes are not exciting at all if I'm being honest. Alright, so we got through a lot of more niche series there, and if I forgot one and you're mad about it, then comment about that. But let's get to a few more of Nintendo's big series. Smash discourse is impossible because everyone is playing two different games and insisting they're the same thing. One side treats it like it's a sacred competitive platform bestowed upon them by Masahiro Sakurai. The other treats it like a chaotic party game. Both sides claim Nintendo agrees with them. Every balance discussion turns into a meltdown. Items are cheap, final smashes are random, stages are unfair, and yet the series is literally built around unpredictability. The competitive scene survives in spite of Nintendo, not because of it, and people are still mad about that. There's also too many characters in Smash Ultimate because it's not balanced at all. No one played Smash Wii U. Smash Bros. Brawl is a disaster. Smash Bros. Melee is overrated and people only play it because they're nostalgic. And then Smash 64, I mean, what is there to say about that game? Also, I don't know why people get so worked up about things in this game. Like, yes, I like to play time battles and I like to have items and final smashes on. I don't know what the issue is with that. Like, I think all tournaments should be like that. Pokemon's biggest obstacle to getting better has always been the people buying it no matter what. Every criticism gets waved away. If you say it's too easy, they say it's for kids, bad performance, it doesn't matter, reused animations, they had to cut corners. The franchise coast, the fanbase refuels it no matter what, and then they act shocked when nothing improves. Double versions, third versions, remakes of remakes, DLCs for games that already feel unfinished. Everyone complains loudly, then just buys everything anyway. Also, yes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver are overrated. They're great games buried under pacing issues and a level curve that turns the second half into a grind. The love comes from nostalgia more than design. Like, everyone's just attached to their first Pokemon game or specific Pokemon in general, but every generation recently just repeats the same cycle of hype, disappointment, but still buying the game and ready to buy any DLC and any merchandise along with it. Pokemon doesn't improve because it doesn't have to, because all of you, yes, you who's watching this as a Pokemon fan who buys all these games, that's the reason it's not getting better. This is not even close to being the best RPG Nintendo's ever made. Fire Emblem, Xenoblade Chronicles, any of the Mario RPGs, they're all better than this. Even Yokai Watch is better than this. Like, most people can't even name other Pokemon besides Pikachu and Charizard, or whatever his name is. Zelda gets argued about like there's an objectively correct ranking and everyone else just hasn't matured enough. Every best Zelda says more about when someone played it than anything else. Like, I've had people argue with me that Zelda 2 is the best Zelda game. The series gets praised for reinvention, yet half the fanbase resists change the second it stops aligning with their nostalgia. Open world was genius until it went too far. Linear design was perfect until it wasn't. Every new entry becomes a battleground instead of an older game, and people get really nostalgic and defensive over these games. Like, personally, I think Ocarina of Time is not a good game. Like, I prefer the linear style of Skyward Sword. I think that's the style that game should go in. I think Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are too open, and that Zelda works better as more of like a linear story game. I think going back to older entries, they're defended like they're immune to criticism, and the talking points never change. Atmosphere, discovery, legacy, like they're just used to smooth over any real issues. Most of the games in the series are alright. Like, I'm not gonna lie and say they're bad, but I think most of them are highly overrated, and it's because of nostalgia. And finally, we're at Mario. The entire Mario series gets treated like it's just immune to criticism. Like the original Super Mario Bros., for example. It was a great game for what it was, but it's really nothing special today. But people act like it's still the best game of all time. But since then, games have pretty much been using the same formula. The franchise gets away with repetition because it does well. Everyone knows who Mario is, everyone buys Mario games. And like with Pokemon, doesn't need to reinvent itself. Half the game's played incredibly safe, and fanbase praises this no matter what. Difficulty discussions become arguments about self-imposed challenges, innovations get reduced to new movement tricks, and every time Mario does something slightly different, people will then immediately argue whether it counts. Mario is not flawless, and in fact probably the most overrated video game series there is. Like, sure, there's a lot of good Mario games, but more often than not, they're just time wasters or just recycled clones of old games. Like, some people act like games like the Thousand Year Door are the pinnacle of RPGs. Well, it's not even the best Paper Mario RPG, that honor belongs to Paper Jam. And also, why do people act like some of these are the best games of all time, like Mario Galaxy? Like, really? You're gonna tell me that's better than the new Assassin's Creed or something? Alright, so I've went over pretty much every Nintendo franchise there is. I'm sure there's probably a couple I forgot, but most of this is not serious. I also mispronounced a few things purposely throughout the video, but if you're still here, then you know that. If you already commented, then you're not listening to this now. There are a few truths here, but I'd say probably like 90-95% of the things here are just over-exaggerations with the sole purpose of rage baiting. That's the entire point of this video. If you want to see one going over Mario games and Zelda games, I have those on my channel. And if you enjoyed this video or got rage baited, be sure to like and subscribe. I have a ton of other content, and if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy that. Thank you for watching Domainy, and I'll see you next time.